Avery.
How's it going, man?
How are you?
Great. Yourself?
I'm excellent, man. I just read an addendum biography on Muhammad Ali from his original biographer. Man, it was so much fun. There's so many things from my generation I didn't realize were happening on the underbelly of what he was doing, and it just adds to the whole mystique and magic of who he was.
No, he was one of my, I used to tell my youngest son, who I just left with our grandkids, and he's in his 40s now. I said, your generation and generation behind you, my heroes were Muhammad Ali, Dick Gregory, Malcolm X, and your heroes are Jay-Z and Puff Daddy.
Yeah.
It's like I wonder what's wrong with y'all. I mean, we had some great, people to look up to and emulate. And
Yeah.
Ali, I'm an Ali fanatic because I used to wrestle in high school,
Yeah.
and Ali was always pretty. I had my afro comb, I would comb my hair after every match like him, and you know, touch up my
Yeah.
face. Really,
That You know, there was a couple of things that really stood out. There was one thing they were like, "Why were you always so confident?" And he was like, "I had to talk big because I had to stick behind my words. That's how I became the greatest." So whenever he would get up there and say he was going to take someone out or this is what he was going to do, he really had to force himself to do it because that's what he was billing himself to be. So, and just the way he was with the fans, they were kind of using a parallelism between Elvis and him, and
right.
they had a relationship, and how Elvis just couldn't be around people, but Muhammad Ali would go to Cape Town and he walked down the middle of the street on purpose because he knew that he would totally brighten up those kids' days. He would
Right.
hatch 1,000 dreams by walking down the street, and he was willingly. He knew that that was his role, and he loved it. He embraced it. That was another endearing thing about him.
No, and he was a devout Muslim.
Yeah,
Before he changed his name, I was a kid, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, he's not Muslim." But then I look back at a lot of footage. He actually converted to Islam way before he fought Sonny Liston,
yeah,
and Malcolm X was his imani. Uh, and I mean, when he was trying to get out of the draft, which he was 4F when he was in Kentucky, they
yeah,
rejected him.
yeah,
Then when he became the champ, like all of a sudden he's smart, he can do it. But no, he was quite. I mean, he was seriously into Islam. He was
yeah,
well, shouldn't say Islam, the Black Muslim movement, which is a little different.
yeah,
But he was in it. He was in it, and no, and they messed with him in his prime.
yeah, yeah. They did. They
In his
certainly did.
prime, and
They
he went to
certainly did.
jail, and anyway,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a whole other rabbit hole. But hey, man, the last time we caught up was in 2019 before
right.
this whole COVID storm happened. So it's great to catch up with you with brand new material. We're kind of in a post-pandemic era now. So what I'd like to begin our conversation with before we get into your latest album is how
Hmm.
did you survive the pandemic? How did you get through it? And how did it change you?
Oh, well, that's a rough one. Um, as a matter of fact, that the last time that year that I saw you before the pandemic, my mother passed in December, the end of December,
Oh,
2019, and then of course I'd stopped teaching at Williams College. I gave them my notice like in that November because my mother was dying and I was just ready to. They were giving me more and more responsibilities, and I'm still doing what I was doing, but and touring and writing, but it was getting less and less because I was doing more and more at Williams. So I decided to leave. And I think I did a concert with them in February, and that's when they closed the school down. Actually, I did 400. I did the 400 project, African American Musical Portrait. And then the pandemic hit, and a woman in the music department, her husband died from COVID. And then my sister, my oldest sister, who's 10 years older than me, she went in the hospital, both her and her husband at the same time, and she died. And then, a bunch of people that I knew passed. Wallace Roney, Ellis Marcellus, Um, I think Mike Longo,
Yeah.
piano player, used to play with Disney. I think he died during that time. My piano player, Nigel and Gums, passed. They said he died from a stroke, but he died like about the same week that my sister passed. And he was in a nursing home, and his wife was in a nursing home with him. She passed a week after. So they were saying, I don't know, it sounds like COVID to me. It wasn't the greatest place up in the Bronx. But
Yeah.
just a lot of people, in-laws. So it was rough. Not being able to see anybody. Fortunately for me, I live out in the boondocks. I live up in the hills in Massachusetts, western Massachusetts, near the Berkshires. Actually, some parts of our town are higher than the elevation in the Berkshires. So, um, and unfortunately for some folks, especially a lot of musicians, I was in a comfortable position financially. Me and my wife were in a position financially that we could weather the storm. Um, and a number of people were not able to, but like I said, I was fortunate. I live out in the sticks. There's nothing out here, so I was able to. I'm a sports enthusiast, health enthusiast. I work out a lot, so I could go for walks. There's nobody there. Of course, you have the internet. You got Zoom. I was actually telling my kids. I said if the pandemic had happened like in 1980s or 1990s at the beginning and the mid of my career, I wouldn't have had a career because we didn't have the technology
Yeah.
that people had. I was able to I did a couple of concerts duo with Chico Freeman, saxophone. He lives in Switzerland now,
Yeah.
and he showed me how to hook up my stuff. We hooked up. Oh God, I can't even think of the name of the. Because Zoom, you have the delay. You can't do
Yeah.
lessons. You can't do. It's just stupid. It's just crazy. But God, what's the program that they had? So it was a little bit of a delay, but not very much. So he and I were able to do a couple of duo concerts over Zoom. And so that was interesting. So
Yeah.
but it was difficult, like I said. But I
Yeah.
was able to weather the storm because financially I was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I knew a lot of people who were not able to. My daughter, who's also an artist, musician, singer, actress. It was rough for her
Yeah.
because then she was in New York. We were trying to get her to come up into the hills in Massachusetts because we're like, all our friends who live in New York are leaving.
Yeah.
She stayed and weathered it, and she actually did a great job. She did a great job. But no, that was a rough period, and I had a whole bunch of work lined up. Like I'm sure, like everybody, had some great gigs coming up, and I was going to be leaving Williams College, and of course, all that evaporated. Um, but the one good thing about it, that's why, young musicians tell me, what should I do? What should I do? What advice would you give young musicians? I say, well, first thing you should do is save your money. I know it's difficult as an artist because our income can be, feast or famine.
Yeah.
But if you focus on just part of your brain, because I mean, I tell people we play some of the most sophisticated and intellectual music on the planet. So we do have those other. So our brain functions at a higher level than other people for that particular thing.
Yeah.
Everybody has that, whether it's carpentry, whether it's radio, whatever it is, you have a particular part of your brain that's a little bit above everybody else. Ours just happens to be music.
Yeah.
So I'm always saying, can we take some of those same neurons that I'm figuring out? If I can figure out what Oscar Peterson is playing, I can pretty much figure out anything in life.
Yeah.
So just trying to take those neurons and move them to other places. So why can't we do that in terms of budgeting and finances and just trying to figure out things? I mean, I had my first child when I was 22, and we had 4 kids, and I was through by the time I was 29, 30. So I've always had to balance being a musician, being an artist, with raising a family, and that's a challenge. But I've always figured, like I said, if I'm figuring out what Oscar Peterson's playing, I can pretty much figure out anything, just moving those neurons to another part of our brain. Um, so it was it was pretty much a drag, obviously,
Yeah.
for everybody. Like I said, the death in my family in terms of the pandemic. Um, but with every human tragedy, something always grows out of it. For instance, the whole enslavement of people in America. Of course, it was something that you wouldn't want to go through. However, whenever there's a real human tragedy or misstep, something always grows out of it. And one of the things that grew out of that experience, the whole African American experience, is the music. People who went through the Holocaust. I mean, it's like some another kind of spirit grows out of that because human beings kind of have that. We have this survival instinct. And I was just talking to somebody the other day, because it kind of relates to the album. Is the new album is that we are at our best when things are worse. It's really bad. Human beings will rise and help each other.
Uh-huh.
It's like, extend a hand.
Uh-huh.
But just if everything is cool, people won't. They'll be just nasty to each other. People of different faiths, different races. If there's a catastrophe, they'll be like, all right, let me give you a hand.
Yeah.
And it's like, why can't we just do that all the time?
Yeah.
It's, I don't know.
Well, in this latest album, I Am My Neighbor's Keeper is kind of a response to what we're living through right now with all of this increased polarization of things that have happened. So, talk to me a little bit about kind of the ideology meeting artistic vision of this project.
Well, if you look back on my work, everybody's different. I'm a kind of artist that I kind of have to have a theme or have to, I've always been accused of being, overly serious, since I was a kid. Adults used to worry about me, but my kids know the real silly part of me.
Yeah.
My wife says I have issues, but so uh, I always look at things, through a lens of what it is that it sort of affects me. Like my last project, 400 African American musical portrait, thinking about 400 years of African Americans being in this country. How would that sound? So, as you said, like especially within the last 40, 50 years, the political situation, the racial situation, has gone topsy turvy. The last administration, people were saying that, oh, they're trying to destroy what we accomplished in the 1960s. I said no, they're trying to take us back to the 1860s. And as now we see, that's exactly what is happening with them overturning, Roe, gerrymandering, which has been going on for the last 30 years or so. Um, and I felt that needed to be addressed. It's especially since the 80s, 1980s, early 1980s. There's been like 1960s. People were concerned about poor people, middle class people. As I said, they were trying to extend a hand. There was the whole apex of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, women's rights, gay rights. People were like, hey, can we just go back or fulfill the promise or thought of what America was formed on. And now people are, if you're if you're poor or broke, it's your fault. God doesn't like you. He likes me because I'm rich. Like what? I don't think Jesus wouldn't be able to get into. He wouldn't be able to get in a lot of these churches right now.
Yeah.
Just some basic human values that seem to be lost. That people are just. We're not here long.
Right.
You know, it's over. That's ever since I was a kid. I've always wondered how a person could cause so much damage in the world, and then you're gone. It's like Hitler. Was he 40 years old? Whatever. Caused all this mayhem, shook up the world, and now he's gone. Just a sheet blowing in the wind. It's like so. Since we're not here that long, can we just, in the words of that great philosopher King, I don't mean Martin Luther King, Rodney King, can we all just get along? You know.
Yeah.
So, thinking about that, the loss of humanity that we have amongst each other, and it's it was just so evident, especially with this last administration. Like I said, with my sister passing, the way they handled the situation with the pandemic, or
Yep.
mishandled it.
Yep.
I'm just going to say it. Uh, we have a catastrophe coming that hasn't happened in 100 years. So let me see. Who can we put in charge of that? Oh, the worst person in the world to put in
Yeah.
charge of that.
Yeah.
Talking about putting bleach in you and sticking stuff up your butt. It's like, wait, well, but
Uh-huh.
anyway, it's like, and people. I mean, I have learned a lot from the pandemic. As I get older, hopefully you learn. I feel that that's what we're here to do on this planet, is to learn. You realize that we're not really that smart as we think we are. We're supposed to, but as the food chain, I mean, this 2.5, 3 pound of gray matter is, the greatest thing on earth, and it's the worst thing on earth. It can create some incredible stuff, music, art, technology, and then it could just be as cruel, that uh, beyond cruelty to each other, and there's no rhyme or reason. So that's why I did the project, just to kind of remind us and to get back to our humanity. Just my and as an artist, I feel that you need to speak. Everybody has a different way of approaching things, and some artists like to say, "Well, I'm not political," and I'm saying everybody's political.
Yeah.
If you do nothing, you're political.
Yeah.
You're letting somebody else have say what it is that they want to say. You're not saying anything, so you are being political. If you and we live in a capitalistic society, and that's just the way it is, and you have to function within that. And to say that, well, I'm not a capitalist. Yes, you are. If you bought gas around the corner, you're contributing to this whatever this is. But
Yeah.
you just try to put some humanity in it. Yes, we are capitalists or whatever, quote unquote capitalist system. Because my undergraduate degree is in economics, and I always realized that, for me, I always realized it's not the system, it's the people.
Yeah.
You have socialism, you're always going to have somebody who's greedy. You have capitalism, you're going to have somebody who's greedy. You have communism, the people on top, they get the stuff. Everybody on it, it's like one for you, three for me, none for you, 10 for me. That's how they divide things up.
Yeah.
So, just trying to remind people of our humanity, that we are responsible for each other. We really are.
Yeah. So is there any part of you that's hopeful coming out of this pandemic and hopefully entering another level of maybe enlightenment? Are you hopeful at all that we're going to get to a better place?
Yes, always.
Okay. All
It's
right.
it goes in cycles.
Yeah.
Always. We're just in a hole right now, and people are we're gonna get out of it. We always do. It's going to be a lot of pain, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Uh, Going back to my original premise, it's like, why can't we just be act right the first? As my grandmother would say, why can't you act right the first time?
Yeah.
So no, I'm always optimistic. Like I did on 400. Um, the last tune is 500. What's the next 100 years going to be? Because I'm always optimistic that people will rise to the occasion. Now, it's funny. My wife and I were talking about that last night, and she's going on about, well, the generation, or our kids' generation, they're too soft. They don't know how to, parenting. I said, no, actually, they have more of a challenge than we did. I mean, when I was a kid, we were worried about nuclear. Whether the Russians were going to bomb us. We had to duck in cover. Get up under the desk. I said, they have that. Plus, they don't even know if the planet's going to be here. And so they've got much more to deal with, and plus we have iPhones. We didn't have all that stuff, so there's a quicker way, to for lack of a better word, to brainwash people. It's instantaneous.
Yeah.
People just, whatever they see on a screen, they believe it, or
Yeah.
whatever somebody tells them. And if they talk like they know what they're talking about, one of my daughter-in-laws, she teaches junior high, and a few years ago she said, I said, well, my generation, we question everything. She goes, these kids don't question jack. If it doesn't come on their phone,
Yeah,
they believe,
it's
and I was
true.
like, "Really?" She goes, no, they're like, they believe it.
Yeah,
Like, well, but always optimistic because there's
yeah,
always going to be somebody who don't go along,
yeah.
going to get out of the matrix. There's always going to be somebody who wants to take the red pill, you know. So
And
no, I'm always optimistic.
yeah,
That's why I did this project of just once again to remind people because everybody's not going to get it, but there are going to be people who go like, wait a minute,
yeah.
you
Well,
know,
speaking of, it's that man behind you that did that too,
exactly,
for sure.
exactly.
So, what are you doing for live shows, promotion? What's going on with you?
Well, I've got the record will be released on June 14th, and actually I've got some things happening that I'm actually getting ready to do a whole symphony gig with the 400 project around that same time. Actually, Juneteenth. We're doing it for Juneteenth. So I've expanded the 400 project. I've got a larger choir, symphony orchestra. I've added African percussion and xylophone. So it's going to be like 120 something people on stage, and then I've got some gigs lined up for the I am my neighbor's keeper. But in the middle of that, I also have a tour that I'm doing, the McCoy Tyner Legends in Europe. I play with McCoy more than anybody on the planet,
Yeah.
and at least 25 plus recordings with him. So we're doing a sort of all-star thing, and then July, and then I come back, and then I do a couple gigs with I Am My Neighbor's Keeper, and then also in October, got some things set up for it as well.
Okay.
So
Excellent. Well, I will be sure to get all of that in the show notes. Avery, it's so great, so refreshing to always hear your brilliance come out. Thank you so much for the music. Thank you for your time, and we'll just keep on hoping.
thank you. What's that picture behind you? The painting.
I'm a visual artist. That's the skyline of Kansas City. It's kind of my logo for the show. I put it together.
Wow, you're a visual artist?
Yeah, yeah. I have shows here in town, and
Wow.
it keeps everything fresh.
So you got the music to help with the creativity? That's great, man.
The one thing about my life is that I dive into writing and painting, and I do broadcasting. I just want to keep music a mystery. I want it to be this magical orb of color and brilliance that I can just kind of stand back and just admire. So yeah, it all comes together holistically into a good it just feels good.
That's beautiful, brother. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
So it's a good thing. Avery, thank you, sir. Have a great tour. I appreciate it. Best of luck with the album, man.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
sir. Take care.